Hopefully you'll get a pop-up.
I got one.
Perfect.
All right, let's call the meeting of the Salem Public Art Commission to order. Today is Wednesday, August 11th, 2021, and it is 9:36 a.m. We'll start with introductions. My name is Chris Darcy, Chair of the Commission.
Spencer Emmerich, Commissioner.
Kelly James, Commissioner.
And I'm Heather Demke, staff with Public Works.
And I invited Zach Hull, former Salem resident who is moving back, to join us this morning because my term on the commission will end at the end of the calendar year. And I approached him about his interest in submitting his name for possible appointment. And so he'll be observing us for a while, but he is on the Zoom call.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning, Zach. And just by way of a quick introduction, Zach is one of the co-owners of X Gallery, where our work from the library collection has been so capably stored during the construction period.
Yes.
We'll start with public comment. Did we receive any public comment, Heather?
No public comment once again this month. Just a heads up, I do have just a few last minute updates again that came in, so we can do those at the end of the meeting if that's okay. Updates and questions for the group.
That's great. All right, let's move into the discussion items on the agenda. The first big one is the library.
And I'm sorry, should we approve our agenda and minutes?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
No problem.
So I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, the minutes from the July meeting, and the agenda for today. We can't take out, we don't have a quorum.
We don't have enough.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Rachel is joining us right now. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello.
Good morning.
Morning, Rachel.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Morning, Rachel. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, the minutes of the July meeting, and the agenda for today.
I move that we approve all those agendas.
Is there a second?
Second. Nope.
Go ahead.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And no opposed. All right, now into our discussion items. Library. Who will be presenting about the returned artwork? Everything I understand is installed.
Yeah, I can give an update. Folks have been really busy this last month working on returning all of the pieces that have been in storage. So X Gallery, who we've worked with for the past year, and they've been wonderful to work with, by the way. They returned all of the artworks that we've had in storage on the 20th of July. So we got all of those pieces back, and that includes pieces from the public collection as well as pieces from the foundation, the library foundation. So all artworks were returned. Eileen, Commissioner Cotter-Howell, and Commissioner Booth worked actually that same week to kind of work on finalizing proposed layout for all of the artworks. And that was completed. We had some additional volunteers, Gretchen Kopedge and Eric West, in addition to Kate Van Emerson from Library Foundation that assisted with this effort. Got the pieces put out just temporarily. Those were all approved. The proposed locations were approved by the library. And we have indeed hired, John Black was able to come on site August 2nd and 3rd and install most of those pieces. There's a few that remain to be installed just in the study rooms. They were still working on those during the install. So there's a few pieces. I think Eileen had expressed an interest in possibly just hanging those ourselves. Otherwise, most of the pieces have been installed, not to say that they couldn't move. So we will be discussing that today. Final action item by this group for formal approval.
Sounds good. What was the final decision regarding the Setzel screen.
Thank you. The Setzel screen was returned from Willamette University. It has been placed. So how to describe it? So initially, the architects were recommending that that piece be placed at the top of the stairs when you're coming up from Plaza level. I think a number of folks chimed in and thought, that there's a lower ceiling there. That is really going to be kind of a constricting, maybe not the best place for that piece. And so it was recommended that it be situated on the opposite end of the stairs. There's about a kind of a half wall on the other end of that open stairwell. So directly across from when you come up the stairs and turn around, the piece has been placed against that half wall. It was later recommended by the architect's hacker that we transition that piece because it does, as you're looking towards the interior of the library from the top of that lower staircase, you're looking at this massive new view of not only the new windows and open space, but also the new staircase, that metal staircase, which is itself beautiful going up to the second floor. It does slightly impede that view, and that was not desired. But in the end, as it stands, I think the library, I think other folks were on board with leaving it where it is for now. It would have to be taken apart again to move. It looks nice where it is, and it seems to be in a spot, given that it's next to that short wall, that would be probably the safest in terms of any seismic questions that might come up down the road. So that's where it's situated.
Great. I think that was a good decision based on the walkthrough I did with you when we were looking at I came to see the Betty LeDuc install.
Right.
So, well, good. I know we will take action on the approval of the locations when we get to the action items. So the next item is the potential for an Amanda Wojcik exhibition. And just because we've got Zach as our guest, Amanda Wojcik is on the art faculty at U of O. She did the large wall relief that was commissioned with the 0.5% for art funds for the library. And we thought it would be a good way to introduce her to the community with a small exhibition of work, two-dimensional work in a corridor at the library. So Heather circulated a proposed kind of letter of agreement with Amanda that outlined her responsibilities and proposed giving her a $2,500 honorarium. Where are we with this show going forward? And I know Rachel, you were kind of on point. Is Heather and Rachel, do you have an update?
I can jump in, Rachel, whenever. I did chat with Amanda after I sent the letter, so I do have an update on the cost and the number of pieces. Okay, so yeah, I chatted after I sent that letter out, draft letter Thursday. I was able to connect with Amanda. I had misunderstood the number of pieces we were looking at. I think initially we were talking about 6 pieces. And it sounds like, Rachel, you'd had some other conversations maybe with her. She has actually 8 or 9 pieces available to show. So she had provided an estimate, and actually I think she's already got the pieces already framed for 8. Looked like 8 of the pieces she would still be working on the last one if we choose to have 9. But the updated estimate for the framing of her artworks for display in the library was $2,300. And then in further chatting with her, it was suggested that an additional honorarium on top of that might be $1,000 to $1,500. So just for those two, if we add $1,500, initially I had $2,500 in that stipend letter. At this point, we're looking at potentially $3,800 if we do an additional $1,500, and we don't necessarily have to do that. And there was also some questions about, I know, Rachel, you were going to work with her on a text panel of some sort that would provide some additional information about Amanda, the artworks, and I think some of the process behind the new piece, our new % for art piece. So that really hasn't quite been factored in. So I think we need to talk that through. So at this point, we're looking at a higher potential cost if we add the additional pieces. Like I said, it might be $3,800, it might be $3,500, depending on the honorarium and the number of pieces we ultimately decide.
Discussion, comments? I just have a question about our obligation to pay for 100% of the framing if in fact we have no ownership in the work. But I don't know, Rachel, what can you add on this?
I guess the only thing I would say is that when we originally spoke with Amanda about doing this, it was made clear that the works that she would be including were not framed and would need to be framed. So obviously that was an expense that would be incurred. And so that's all I can add, I guess, is that we've known this all along, that there was going to be a framing expense, and that obviously once the artworks are framed, they're framed, and we don't take the frames back. So, and then as far as the number of pieces, we originally, I think, were talking about 7 pieces. She then added one that is already framed, so that brought the number to 8. And then there was a 9th piece because it seemed that there would be enough space for that. Otherwise, you know, it's quite a long wall, one of the walls, and then there's an adjacent wall. So it seemed better to have the flexibility to have all of those pieces as opposed to having it look very sparse. So
That's great background. I appreciate the fact that we did agree that we would do the framing. What about comments from others? I guess one just comment that I would add is I think it is good for us to kind of set the bar at a certain level as the library reopens, as this space is envisioned to be a potential location for future shows, that, you know, it will be well presented, very professional, you know, accompanied with text so that library users will have access to, you know, Amanda's design thoughts and processes. So I think it's good. I continue to worry about security. So I'll just throw that out there as the whatever hanging mechanism is considered for the work.
So the pieces will be hung on the, there is a I forget what it's, like a picture rail.
Yeah.
And that has wires that come down, and they will be attached to that, and they can be attached in a way that will ensure that they can't be just removed. And then the other thing that we can also do and talk with the library about, and I just thought of this the other day, was attaching magnetic strips to the back of the pieces or somewhere, because the library obviously has its own security system that prevents people from walking out with books.
Great idea.
So that would be another measure that we could apply.
I had not even thought of that. That's perfect. And I know the convention center does use the hook system for the work that's installed there, and there is a mechanism on the clip that is can be secured.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good.
So
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add one other thing, just in terms of the purpose behind this. Something that we have wanted to do is to give some context to the larger commissioned piece that's prominent in the library. And so the whole intention behind having this show as the library opened was to be able to educate the public on her process, her methods, the inspiration for the larger piece and how it connects to her other work. And also, you know, obviously just provide a really nice show as the library reopens, and that corridor will be used subsequently for other kinds of exhibitions. So, and I think Amanda is really the pieces that she has chosen, and I can share those if people are interested.
I'd love to see them.
And these are just, let's see, is that okay, Heather?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Hold on, I'm gonna try to figure out how to open this into a new window. Sorry, excuse me, just for a sec. Let's see. Okay. And let me know if you can see what's here.
Yes,
And is it scrolling properly?
it is.
Okay, so this is the piece that's already framed. And this is one of the waterfall pieces where she uses Band-Aids. And this is an older piece, but it relates in some ways to the piece that we have now at the library, in that it is a waterfall. And these are just kind of quick snapshots that she took. So just here's another piece that's paper. Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is cut paper. Oh no, this is a drawing. Here's another drawing. And you can see there is a relationship to the larger piece that we have. This is cut pieces of paper. And so it has a three-dimensional quality to it. Here's another piece that relates specifically to our piece that we have. And
Are these full sheets of paper, Heather? I mean, Rachel?
they vary in size.
Okay.
So this one's really great. I love it. So anyhow, there's just a wide variety of pieces that show sort of a continuum of her work, and then also the relationship to the larger piece that's in the library. Obviously, you can see the similarities here, and some of these are working drawings, I believe. So some of them are like, I want to say 30 by 36. I mean, they're pretty substantial. I think the smallest one is the one that's already framed, this one. And this is the one that we were thinking of putting on sort of the title wall at the text panel. And it is the older piece. I think it's from 2006 or 2009. Anyhow, I don't have that in front of me. But anyhow, that gives you a sense of the work and how it will be used to provide some context to the larger piece. I think too, I mean, it also provides an opportunity, if the library is so inclined, to maybe create some kind of programming that involves cut paper or something like that, if they wanted to do some art programming that allows people to explore some of these techniques of application of, Band-Aids or other sticky papers. And anyhow, there's just, I think, a lot of potential for programming if they're interested in that. So.
Well, I know the library has had some craft activities. And maybe it's the youth librarian who has done some of that programming, more family oriented, but I think that's something we should talk with Sarah about, because I think she is inclined towards those kinds of, different ways to use the space in the library for bringing people together. Yeah, it's a fun idea.
And I think too, just those pieces that I just showed, am I still sharing? I don't think I am.
No.
They're just so colorful and vibrant, playful, but at the same time, they're very active, but they have a minimal quality to them as well. I think they'll just look really nice in the space. And so I'm looking forward to seeing it.
That's great. Thank you both for working on this. So what is the timeline for this show happening? And I'm assuming when we get to the action items further on in the agenda, we'll approve a dollar amount for this exhibition. But is it planned that Amanda will bring the work up here and it will be hung before the library opens?
So I think we'd need to chat with her about that. I had thrown those tentative dates in the letter. It seems like it would be nice if it was the soft opening is September 1. So it seems like it would be nice just to have everything installed, as folks start wandering in. She has not responded yet on the dates and whether or not that would work. And then we need to work out. I think, Rachel, you had mentioned that your husband was willing to help with the install of the pieces. So I don't know what kind of time. I think that would be very quick given the setup, but I don't know what his availability is. So I think we need to fine tune kind of those dates. But the thought is that it would be in place for 5 months through January, which Rachel had corrected me. I kept thinking it was only through the end of the year, but 5 months. And then that space would be used for community art the next, as part of the Salem Reads effort. So.
Yes, I think when I initially spoke with Amanda about this exhibition back in June, the dates that I had jotted down for delivery of the pieces were the 23rd to the 25th. I think that's what I had here. I know she's going to be away on August 30th through the 2nd of September. So ideally, once we have a date from her as to when she can drop them off, it shouldn't take but a couple hours to put it up.
We are getting down, it's a time crunch. If she's going to be framing 7 pieces of art, that takes a bit of time too. So obviously we'll be hopefully moving this forward today, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Because you're right, the time is, we've only got a couple weeks.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not hearing anybody voicing concerns about moving forward with this exhibit. So is there any more discussion on this topic?
I just have one question. Are we going to have any sort of explanation as to how she was chosen, about the process of how she was chosen to create the main piece? And if so, it seems like that might be a good thing to have in conjunction with this exhibition.
There is going to be an additional label over by the actual work.
Okay.
So it seems like, in my opinion, any external media should definitely, or media releases should definitely include a description of the selection process, because it was open and competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there should be something related to that on the label, the text panel that will be by her wall relief.
Okay.
And then but I don't think we need to go into, I think the text panel for this temporary exhibition should relate to her design process and how these drawings contribute to what ultimately resulted in her larger work on the wall.
Okay.
What about thoughts by others?
Yeah, I agree. I also wanted to just mention real quick, the birds looked really nice in that space. I know that's off topic, but
Thank you.
yeah.
They really do. I had a chance to take a look at them too, Spencer, and I think it's a big improvement. I mean, I'm very excited about this building, you know, being very forward thinking and fresh, and just a lot of attention to detail went into the process. So the overall, you know, for a seismic upgrade, we got a lot of results.
Yeah, and everywhere you can display on all those, most of the surfaces.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's very, very exciting.
I'd like to just chat a bit more if we have, I think we have time this morning, about the text panel piece itself. And I'd like to clarify, I think, you know, it was, my conversation with Amanda was pretty brief. I think she's willing to provide some information. And I think chatting with you, Rachel, I think you're willing to kind of help pull that stuff together. But I'm not sure what the final result is, if we're looking to print that on some kind of like a vinyl, or what we're looking, and who's gonna ultimately complete that task, I guess, is still a question in my head.
Well, I am hoping that, Rachel, you can continue to be the point person on any refinement of a text panel, you know, to do copy editing based on what Amanda gives us. And I'm happy to participate in that, but it seems like that is kind of up your alley. I was thinking that this would be vinyl on something, so that it really looks good. And what was the other question?
Yeah, I guess, how does that factor in? I mean, are we going to be asking Amanda as part of, and I'll include that in the letter if need be. I'd like to be have everything clarified and drawn out. I don't know if we will be printing that separately, or if that's something that we'll be asking Amanda to do. Maybe we need to chat with her a bit more, but that's going to get factored into the cost, depending on the size of what that is. And I have, this is new to me. We did some recently that are now in council chambers, and they're probably different than what we're thinking a little bit, but they're kind of a collage, a large selection of images and kind of a banner on a large 66 by 48, they called it styrene panel. We did 4 of them. Each was 247. So I'm sure that's larger than what we're thinking, but as we just try to think about costs and who's going to print and what that looks like, I guess, just a bit more discussion.
I would say that budgeting $250 for signage would be appropriate. And then as far as the material is concerned, what I had spoken with Amanda about was having just maybe some vinyl lettering that has her name, you know, to announce the exhibition on the wall itself, and then a text panel that has the interpretive information about the exhibition and about Amanda. And then there will be obviously small labels next to each artwork. And then as far as materials are concerned, the text panel, it could be on foam core or some kind of heavy, you know, material like that, that it can warp and present some problems for an exhibition that's going to be up for the length of time that we're talking about. So it might be better to have that into, have that put into some kind of frame, especially also considering that we are going to be using the hanging system that they have there and not applying something directly to the wall.
So that being said, Rachel, do you think 250 is enough for that?
I think it is. I think if it's put into a frame, then it won't need to be on like a heavy duty foam core. It could be on a lighter weight material. And then, so if there is a frame that needs to be purchased, I don't imagine that it's that expensive. And it won't be 6 feet.
Yeah.
What, I can't remember what the
Yeah,
size
it
was that you
yeah.
said. So I think 250, maybe 300. The vinyl lettering shouldn't cost much for her name. And then the actual little labels, I could prevail upon Jonathan to print those and mount them.
Cool. I was going to ask about those. So we're thinking that 250 should be factored into this stipend for sure, and that Amanda, you're thinking Amanda could complete that for us, or we're going to work with her.
I think we could work with her. It would be easier to have it done here in town instead of having Amanda do it in Eugene and then need to bring it here. So
Seems like it needs to be a separate.
yeah, I
separate
don't
fund.
see it as part of her responsibility.
Okay. Well, we can certainly pull that then and not include that, factor that into the total stipend cost. I guess I'll just say part of that. So I had some questions early on about the costs. This is kind of a new venture for SPAC, and this is a new venture certainly for me. And just you'd mentioned earlier the cost of the framing, and this is not pieces that are in our public collection, but in looking back and reviewing code language, activities for public education of art, those are certainly under the purview of the commission. And so wrapping that into, this is a public education event of sorts. So we're wrapping this stipend and all of these associated costs into that. I guess it just makes me question a little bit if we have to then do that text panel ourselves separately from, and maybe it's neither here nor there. I'm just stating.
I kind of agree with Rachel about if Amanda can contribute the content for the text panel, I don't think it would be that complicated for us to get that laid out and printed and then put into a frame that is compatible with the ones that her work will be in. And then, potentially then that frame and that format could be used by the library going forward, as for whatever else they've got coming.
Right.
It seems like, and, we've got a graphic, and designer on the commission who can comment on the look and feel, and we've got close relationships with the Hallie Ford about, their best practices. So I feel like it would be probably just easier to handle it in Salem than go back and forth.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure Amanda doesn't want it put on her plate too, so.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will have to get approved by Sarah at the library, and it just seems like, given the time frame, it might be simpler to just handle it in town.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And then we did learn that there will not be, Amanda was able to work with the Elizabeth Leach Gallery, and we will not have any gallery fees for that time period. So that was good news.
Good. I mean, the good thing about an association with a gallery like that is that they have a very active social media presence. And I'm sure that Daniel Peabody will help get the word out, about this small show of one of their gallery artists. All right, are we ready to move on to PR and timeline for that PR?
That's good.
Do we need to vote on the action item?
I think, are we going to come back to all the action items, Heather? Is that what you
Yeah,
had?
I had the 2 items. However, folks want to do it, but we had just kind of formal approval of the returning art as well as the stipend at the end as action items, but we can certainly do that whenever.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it now. Did I, maybe I missed something, but did I receive anything that summarizes what work is where in the library?
I did not send that out. What I sent, so we do have that and I can send that to the group or I can share. Do we want to talk about that now or are we still on Amanda's?
Well,
You know-
let's finish the Amanda Wojcik. I was assuming that Eileen was going to make a presentation showing us, giving us some examples of where works have been placed. And I was afraid I'd missed that. But let's wrap up the Wojcik. So we know that things seem like they're in good shape to move forward. We've got a change in the dollar amount to include the additional cost of the framing, her request for an honorarium. And then, but it seemed like the terms of the letter were reasonable to me. Did anyone else have concerns about that? Okay,
It all
doesn't
seemed-
sound like it.
Yeah, it seemed reasonable. to me.
So what is our total up to now?
Okay, so again, starting from the framing fees of 2,300, and then the requested honorarium up to this group 1,000 to 1,500. So that would bring us up to either 3,500. Well, if we did 1,200, we're looking at 3,500. If we do 1,500, we're looking at 3,800 total. So that's up to this group, 2,300 plus an honorarium.
I would suggest that because we are paying for all of the framing, that we choose the lower dollar amount for the honorarium. But that's where I am on that.
I'm with that too. Seems
I
fine.
didn't hear you, Kelly.
I think that's fine.
I think so too.
Rachel?
I agree.
All right. Good.
And just to clarify, is that the 1,000 or I had mentioned probably confusing 1,200? She had mentioned 1,000 to 1,500.
I would go with 1,000 myself. But mainly because we are making a large investment in the framing. What do other people think?
I think
Yeah, I
that's
think-
reasonable.
Yeah, sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Should we request a formal motion? We don't do these too often.
Yes, I would like a motion to approve the letter, and then the addition, 100, we will pay 100% of her framing, and we will provide her with an honorarium of $1,000. Is anyone willing to make that motion?
Just one, do we need to put a dollar amount on the framing? I mean, if we pay 100% of her framing,
Mm.
does it need to be stipulated? I'm just making sure.
So we could include a final cost of 3,300 it would be based on the most recent frame estimate plus a 1,000 honorarium. So
Okay.
3,300 stipend.
How do people feel about that?
Seems
I'm fine. That sounds like a good way to deal with it.
okay. All right. So is there a motion? Do we need to make the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll move that we do that. Is that too vague? I can't, that we provide the stipend and the framing costs as stipulated.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion regarding the Amanda Wojcik exhibition, say aye.
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 I
Aye. And no opposed.
Nice.
All right, motion carries.
Great.
Let's move on to a PR around the library artwork.
Unless you want, I know you have lots of ideas. I reached out to Kathy Ersprung, who is doing PR for the library specific, just to get an update on where they're at. I can share that.
So Heather, before we go into that, you've mentioned that they're opening on the 1st. And
Yes.
what does that mean exactly? Because that's a Wednesday, and I'm just curious.
Basically, as I understand, the doors are opening. There's still going to be some things. Most of the books are in and ready for checkout. But I think, they're not planning any activities yet. There might still be some limitations on some of those and things. So September 25th is kind of the big blast. That's when everything is fully up and running. And they plan to kind of announce that at some point. They haven't done that yet.
Okay, thanks.
So is the library PR more about your library is back, these are the services, these are some of the new features of the improved building? We want to have our library be everything that our community wants and deserves, as opposed to, the seismic retrofit was designed by Hacker, a prominent architecture firm. This is another of the city's large public art projects. An open competition resulted in the selection of Amanda Wojcik. In addition, another 80 plus works of art were returned. Am I right about that, Heather?
I think you're spot on. They were specifically not planning to do anything art related. They knew that we had an interest in kind of unveiling the new piece and having, drafting some stories of the returning pieces. So I'm not positive on the architect angle. I presume that they'll be sharing some more information about that. That's been a big deal, but for sure, nothing about the artwork.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense to me. And that gives us an opportunity to figure out what some of our key messages are, and then what opportunities we have to get those out. I'm hoping that we can do something that brings kind of the arts community into the building for kind of a tour, a look at, Amanda's work and look at all the works in the collection. It seems to me that just a story in Oregon Arts Watch would be desired. Maybe some coverage in Port, which is a blog that Jeff Yon has in Portland. I have been in touch with him, and I know he'll come back to Salem. Brian Libby, who's an architecture blogger, cultural writer in Portland, is a possibility. He's somebody who's always looking for things. I don't know. In Salem, you've got the Statesman Journal and you've got Salem Reporter.
And Press Play.
And yeah, I think enlisting Carly Wright from Press Play Salem would be important. She's been doing weekly what's coming up in Salem. It's more of a listicle type of thing, but she definitely has a following.
I was going to also say the Register Guard and the Eugene Weekly, because of Amanda's connection to the university. And then you did already reach out to the U of O Quarterly. But I have a question about just process here. So if Kathy is not doing anything art related, who is going to be doing this outreach?
So that would be myself, probably that would draft that, and other folks can chime in and help, or other folks on the communications team. But that was been one of my duties, was to at least draft press releases in the past few years. So I am happy to at least take an initial stab at that, and then run that back by you, and then Yeah, that's what I was thinking is so I could start drafting some of that message with your guys' help, and then we could share that. Usually what we do when we send those out is they just go to local media, but we can certainly pick through, we use flash alert system. We can select media from other areas. So we can certainly do that for Register Guard. Not sure about the Eugene Weekly, and then we could also just share if we have contacts for these other sources and see what kind of information they then would want to create from what we've shared.
Yeah, I think flash news is good for what it is, but I think some targeted outreach to specific writers, in Eugene and within the arts community would be smart.
Yeah.
The Public Art Archive also is it's a national online database of public art, and I can certainly help put together a list of media outlets and key individuals who would be interested in getting this release. The Ford Family Foundation, some of the other funders, I think, would be interested because of their interest in the arts.
So I think go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, I was just going to mention too, I'm just looking at Amanda's bio. She went to Colgate University, and then she has MFAs from Alfred and Bard. So I think we should send something to all three of those schools' alumni relation offices.
Definitely. Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Her colleges that she attended, Colgate University, Alfred University, and Bard.
Oh.
So I think it would be nice to send a press release to each of those with a little cover note.
Sounds great.
Yeah, good, excellent idea.
So,
I know that, and a lot of those things, they have active social media accounts for alums. And so, if we provide them with an image, could go out on a Facebook feed or an Instagram feed, and the art departments in those places, where the art department at Colgate would be another place for things to go.
So do we have those photos yet? I know I had connected her with the person at Hacker who was coordinating the photography. Do you know if it's happened, Heather?
we might need to reach back out, and I can do that. She asked me if I'd heard anything when I spoke with her, and that was back in the night or
Okay.
before that. We can have.
Yeah, the last email I have, it looks like it's from July 21st, and Calvin is the person at Hacker who is arranging the photography. And I know they connected, but it sounds like maybe they haven't finalized the date or when the photos are actually going to be taken. So anyhow, it would be nice if we could use some of those images for PR.
Yeah, I agree. It would not surprise me if this project is published in architecture and design magazines.
We also have really good photos that Kelly took the first day of the install. They're really great. Some close-ups of her and the guys working on the piece. And then we've got video from the second day that I've not seen yet. It's still rough, but that Trevor Smith, our new PIO, had took, and he does really well with video. So he's willing to put that together however we want. We could share that with whatever news release goes out. He is still interested in maybe another interview. He did interview Amanda as part of that video. So he had some good questions for her. He's interested in another interview if we want to do that. We don't necessarily need to.
I just want to point out that if we're going to request to get images for PR from a commercial photographer, that we very well may need to pay for the usage of those images.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said, Kelly.
If we're going to request to use the images for our PR, that we might have to pay for that usage.
Yeah, right. Well, let's find out.
Okay.
And I guess that would be talking to Hacker about, if Hacker is the client that paid for the shots, whether we are part of that usage or whether we have to pay extra. Yeah.
Yeah, when Calvin replied, he said that they can coordinate the third-party license fee, and that he was going to ask the photographer, her name is Laura Swimmer, for a license for 3 to 5 photos, but I am almost positive that that would not include the city. But we should double check. That was for Amanda's use.
Okay.
What was the photographer's name?
Laura Swimmer.
Thank you.
She must be in Portland. I don't know that name, but I'm sure Hacker would have a really good.
She's in Seattle, it looks like.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So what's the timeline, Heather, for you're doing a first draft of something that you could share with Rachel and with me?
I will leave that up to you, and I can accommodate. I'll get right to it. I want to clarify if we indeed want to do a couple different stories, if we're looking at one story that wraps in Amanda's work and exhibition plus key pieces of the collection, or if we're maybe thinking of a couple different stories.
I think there are a couple of storylines. One obviously is the overall project. The second one is Amanda Wojcik and her thought process, her design process about the big commission piece. And third is the gift of the Betty LeDuc work to the city. And that would give us an opportunity for some coverage in Medford and Ashland, and potentially with Jefferson Public Radio. Another, going back to the Amanda story, this could also be geez, I'm blanking out on the name of the radio station in Eugene.
ALCC.
KLCC. KLCC they have a reporter here in Salem. He can pitch stories to his editor for radio. And if he gets the go ahead, they'll air on KLCC. He can do a story here. I've got the guy's name somewhere. I'm blanking out on it right now. He's good.
He interviewed you for Good Sense, if I remember right.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He might be a former OPB guy. I think he had a state capitol beat, and now he's working for KLCC. Yeah, but that's good. That's they've got a lot of breadth of coverage.
Okay, so 3 potential stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and correct me, kind of the overall, I could start on the overall kind of discussion of the returning collection, how it's, been curated in a new way, much thought put into it. I can work on that message first. We can continue to move forward with Amanda and get some more information on her thought processes behind the new percent for art. And so that one might be kind of second in terms of timeline, and maybe geared more towards the September 25th or closer to the end of September.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all going to probably they all probably should happen around the same time.
Mm-hmm. I think the Betty LeDuc could be folded into the reinstall of the collection, and just highlight the fact that the reinstallation of the collection is not the right word, but kind of anchored by also this large gift that was recently added to the collection, and to just talk in some general terms about how the changes in the layout and architecture of the library will now highlight the collection in new ways and make it more visible I mean, the lighting alone has changed substantially in there because of the new windows and then just how the walls have been painted, you know, all that orange is gone and now it's white in there. And so the art is really popping. So, and then like the birds now in this really beautiful spot where you can see it in a whole different light. So, I mean, maybe that's the theme of that story, is seeing the collection in a new light. I mean, literally with the changes that have happened there.
It's beautiful.
Just kind of thinking out loud about that. But I agree that the timing, it would be nice to have information out there about Amanda's piece as the library opens on the 1st, because people will be going in and out and seeing it and possibly taking pictures and sharing them on their social media and so forth. And so the more information that we can have out there about that piece, that time, I think would be important.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I can try to get cracking on some starts to that ASAP. If you have set dates that we want to try to, I do very well with deadlines. So if we want to, or if we trust that I'm going to try to get started right away, I will do just that. So September 1, it sounds like we'd like to start to have things ready for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we had, could you get us a draft by the August 20th? That's a week from Friday.
Yes, that should be just fine. A draft for both potentially. I can do that.
Yeah. I mean, as we were talking, I also wondered if maybe you can capture some comments from Amanda through what Trevor videotaped. And then that might save that. You might be able to just pick up some content without having to go back and forth by email.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And it would be interesting because he is new to the project, to get his take on what he thought was the most persuasive, what were the things that she said that kind of caused him to click on what she was trying to accomplish.
Sure. And in her original proposal that was part of the selection process, she, there's all the background information about her as far as other public commissions that she has been, that she's completed.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I will look back at that as well. I've saved all of that.
And the text, the label that she wrote for that piece, you have that, right?
Yes.
Heather? Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. I can do that by August 20th. I'll have some material to send. Should I send that to just a couple of you or send that out to everyone? Let me know.
Well, I am definitely committed to, reviewing it, doing any copy editing.
Okay.
And I understand the clock is ticking on everything. So does anybody else want to see it before it's final?
I'm happy to also. Heather, the other thing for that large piece, I think it would be really important to have a quote from Sarah in it, and in both of the press releases, to maybe have her talk about how the public art collection enhances the library and something to that effect. And then she was also part of the selection committee for the Amanda Wojcik piece. So to have her provide some kind of quote about that, I think would be nice.
Yeah.
Along with Chris as well, as chair of the commission. And Amanda has the art. everyone can chime in.
Well, if you do this right at the very beginning, this type of document is something that it can be used a lot.
Mhm.
So I think it's important it's better to err on more content than, the sound bites. And then it is there for whatever it's going to be used for, a radio interview, a media release, what have you.
Okay, I'll do a draft and get that to Chris and Rachel by August 20th. If others are interested, let me know in seeing that as well. Anything that we produce, Kathy does our social media for the city. So she would share a little clip from that with an image to Instagram, to the city's Facebook. We do use Twitter as well. And then we could ask others to share from what we send out as well, other agencies or entities that we're working with. So. And then we would include information update. I could certainly include an info update on our website.
Okay. And I'm happy to also contribute a list of people who I think are arts VIPs around.
That would help.
Who should get they should be a part of an email list to get the release and any images.
Great. I just wanted to say one more thing. So Kathy, in the efforts that they're working on for the library, just wanted to share that they're also working on a map brochure, some kind of welcome back brochure. So my hope, I've not seen those yet. I asked her about getting draft copies of those. I know this group had expressed interest, and I think library staff were interested in potentially creating some kind of walking tour of the artwork. So I think we might, depending on what they have started, we could go in that direction as well, and just kind of tack on to any kind of map or start that they already have and add pieces of artwork and maybe some tidbits from our fresh set of labels and new information that we have about the pieces. So we can work on that down the road.
Sounds good.
Good.
Okay. We've got a lot of people have worked on this project, so we've got a lot of people to thank. Do you want to talk about that, Heather? It's our next agenda item.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone. I just felt it was important to get it on the record. Yeah, a lot of time was spent, particularly, Commissioner Eileen Cotterhow, Commissioner Cotterhow has spent a number of days at home kind of reviewing the collection and kind of piecing together potential locations as all of the collection returns to the library. And then her and Commissioner Booth, Paula as well, they've spent several days on site. Paula assisting with the reinstall and the kind of new design and where it's and how of the birds, which was multiple days. Eileen, it was multiple days on site, kind of playing with, the artwork and really thinking through very thoughtfully new placements and how to group pieces together from the collection and from the Library Foundation collection as well, from two different collections. So we've got about 70 plus pieces all together now in the library. And it was really, Eileen and Paula did a lot of work on that to kind of figure where those pieces might go and how. As well, working with Kate Van Emerson from the Library Foundation. She has been wonderful to work with. She's brought on 2 extra volunteers, Gretchen Kopedge and Eric West from the foundation, and they assisted greatly that week before the install. They were kind of helped us unpack the day that the artwork came back, which took a large portion of a day. They came back on multiple days and kind of helped run pieces. We were staging everything in the auditorium so that pieces would not get damaged. And then we would move pieces back and forth out to potential locations on the floor, returning those pieces at the end of the day, putting them back out the next day, put everything back out so that the library could approve that last day. It was a lot of work. So really just wanted to state that for the record, a huge thank you to both the commission and to our volunteers, extra volunteers.
Thank you, Eileen, Paula, and Eric, and Gretchen, and Heather, everyone who made it possible.
In addition to that, and you've been working on that too a little bit, Rachel, the labels. We're rewriting 100 I think it's right around 100 artwork
Mhm.
labels, and that's been a massive effort. That's included Eileen, Rachel, Paula, as well as Gretchen, and I'm not sure if Eric, I think Eric might have got wrapped into that as well.
I think he
So
did.
yeah, another couple huge efforts.
I want to say that Michael Hernandez and I spoke at a concert we both attended recently, and we talked about that. And we are in awe and the amount of work that you people and those people have put in. It's humbling, you know, how much work you guys have put in. So very appreciated.
Yeah. It looks great. Can't wait for everybody to see. That's all that I think I had on that. We lost Chris. Let's see.
She's gone for a walk in the park.
Can't say I blame her.
Yeah.
Heather, while we're waiting for her to come back, did you see the email this morning from Eileen about the piece that will be loaned to the Bush House?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so back in February of 2020, Ross at the Bush House requested the long-term loan of the Ewart piece.
Right.
So he circled back to confirm that and Eileen, I sent it to Eileen and she confirmed that that piece didn't go back to the library, that it will in fact be loaned
Yeah.
on a long-term basis to the Bush House. And I'm not sure if we need, I think we had already discussed it, so it's just a formality of an agreement at some point, but.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the 6 pieces that we're not returning, and that was on the list that I sent out to the group, the list that I did send. So yeah, I think Eileen and I had chatted about that. I think I just need to develop that loan agreement. And we're,
Which piece was that? I'm sorry, somebody rang my doorbell.
oh, sure. What is it called? And
I'm not sure what the name of it is, but it's an Anthony Ewart, it's a pastel painting that was given to the library in the 1920s by the Salem Art League, and the Bush House had requested a long-term loan of it.
Mhm. Yes, and I did run into Ross Sutherland from the Bush House Museum, and then he sent the email. So
called Landscape, and I've got some pictures of,
Okay.
it includes that of the few pieces that we're not returning, so I can bring that up.
is there a reason that that could not be gifted to the Bush House Museum, or is it better to remain in the collection and on a loan?
I think Eileen had some thoughts on that.
And also, just a quick question, is it part of the public art collection or is it the foundation collection?
Yeah, that particular piece is listed as part of our collection, the City
Okay.
of Salem collection.
Okay,
So, but it was given originally to the library.
I'd have to look back through the history. I don't have
I
that.
think that's what, yeah, I'm not, that is what Ross said in his email originally, but I don't know where that information came from. So
There is another piece from the foundation that I think is not returning that Eileen was thinking Ross Sutherland might have an interest in as well as a loan. But so we would just need to flesh that out. There might be a couple pieces, only one from the public collection. Yeah, and whether or not we want to indeed gift down the road, maybe we can talk about that. Maybe that's a September topic.
Yeah, and I would want to know from Ross about whether these works would actually be displayed at the Bush House Museum or whether they would just go into their holdings. But I think we don't have to, if we could deal with this in September, I think it'd be fine.
It was to install in the Bush House Museum.
Okay,
It's an upstairs bedroom that they're doing some sort of renovation or reinterpretation of.
okay. All right, anything else on the library? Let's move on then to the Echo Earth Globe.
Yeah, I think many of these others will be quick. Not a whole lot from my end to report on the Echo Earth. Chris and I did meet with Carol Snyder back on the 16th of July. It was a Friday. We sat down with her. Salem Parks Foundation, Carol had expressed an interest in learning more about the Eco Earth and potentially assisting with some kind of restoration or fundraising. And so we chatted with her briefly and shared the updated condition assessment and costing. She desires to take that back to her board shortly. I think their next meeting is September 2nd. She sent us a few different questions about ARG and Mary Heintzman, whether or not she was still around and available for consultation, if other groups have expressed an interest. And we really haven't reached out to others just yet. I mean, it feels like we're still kind of just thinking through next steps. So we meet with her again next week, it sounds like, before she goes to the board. But that's all the update that I have from her. You have anything to add?
I think the conversation was very positive.
Yes.
She's very positive. I guess they have a new board member who has expressed interest in seeing the Parks Foundation take on a big project as opposed to their ongoing work of providing smaller grants to parks throughout the city. I guess they didn't have a quorum for their August meeting, which is why this is going to come up at the September meeting. So she did caution us that at least one of their members was surprised, had some sticker price issue, surprise. But I think it's definitely worth pursuing, and I'm willing to put some time into it. She seemed very like a super positive thinker. Type of lady.
As well, I've got a couple other folks I just wanted to share that have reached out. I heard from a Mr. Al Newman, who apparently his family had contributed some funds during the initial installation, and they have a plaque, one of the name plaques down there. He was commenting specifically on the plaques and the disrepair of those, and was interested in donating funds to help with those. And I'd mentioned that we were looking at kind of a complete overhaul of the piece, and he'd like to keep informed as we move forward. And then another woman reached out, Jules Youngren, who was the cartographer on the initial project, has reached out to ask about next steps and has volunteered her time as well. So it's neat to see these other people's. I'm getting one or two so far a month as more and more people are down there with the new amphitheater. So
yeah. Well, good. Any other comments on the Echo Earth Ball? All right, let's move on to the Wayne Taysom. Lights just went out for Heather. So, all right, I'm not sure where things stand with the Wayne Taysom. I have not been able to find out any more about how he came to get this commission. And I have not been able to get into Mission Mill. And anyway, is there any news on the Wayne Taysom stuff, Heather?
yeah, another short one. I think we've just kind of kept this one here. Eventually we'll need to determine once we get more information how we're going to display the pieces again. You had shared that the Oregon Heritage Commission has a grant program It looks like the deadline is end of October per your email, and I looked at their site briefly. So end of October deadline for grants that range, I guess, from 5 to 20,000 for projects related to conservation, development, interpretation of Oregon's cultural heritage. There's a couple webinars coming up, one on September 2nd and September 9th. If we're interested in kind of learning more and potentially applying and using some grant funding to display the plaques, I can certainly look into the webinars. It looks like it's a pretty simple grant application process, fairly simple. I printed off kind of some of the guidelines, and I'll just share the priorities. They do have five identified priorities, and they're looking at projects that preserve or develop heritage resources that are threatened or of statewide significance. Projects that preserve or interpret the history of voices previously marginalized, and project readiness, to name a few of those priorities. So I'm not sure if it would work out for us. It might. I'd have to look into a bit more, but I can certainly attend the webinar, and that's a thought as an option moving forward.
I think it's worth, I think it's worth doing the webinar.
Mhm.
They don't have a lot of money. And I know the projects it's become a competitive process. So, and we may not be ready with a next step in order to be able to make a case effectively, but I think it's worth considering it.
Could
Kind
you,
of depends where the city is on the plans for that lower level in the Civic Center.
Yeah.
And that may not be cooked enough right now. And
Is
then in
Wayne
terms
Basin-
of, relating to any kind of underserved population, we just wouldn't be competitive in that arena.
Kelly, you had a thought?
Wayne Taysom, are we talking about the Peace Plaza mural now? Is that?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
This is still the old council doors that you took.
Okay,
photos of.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And I don't know. Yeah, there was a thought that the upcoming first floor reconfiguration, I don't know where their design is. They're moving forward quickly, I think, on that piece that they are constructing sooner than later, the Welcome Center, but I'm not sure where they're at on the designs for that. I think they're making progress, but that was one thought, because that project in particular will generate some funds. It's a small amount, I think about 5,000, but that money could be used to potentially do something with those bronze panels and reincorporate it somewhere into City Hall there. So.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like this remains kind of a work in progress.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to, we did not take a vote on the final placement of the art in the library. Am I correct about that? I kind of got distracted when that guy rang my doorbell.
Correct.
All right, so that is now the next thing on the agenda. So I would ask for a vote, even though we haven't really seen the plan.
Yeah, so what I sent out was just the list. In hindsight, I could have sent both. Eileen has painstakingly put together a list of all the pieces. There's 71, if I counted right, between the two collections that are in the library now. And she's got each piece, well, some have the names, some are by artist, so we could further clarify that. But she's got each piece listed by what floor they've been placed, or the proposed placement. So we have that as well. My thought was that's a lot of pieces for the group, so I just wanted to, I guess, formalize what pieces were not returning. Seemed like the easiest approach. So that's why I sent the list out that I did. So that's all of the pieces of that 71. There's roughly 35 from the public collection. The others are part of the foundation collection. And there's 6 of those, 7 if you include the Staprons that was deaccessioned last year, that large piece with the holes and that was down in the basement. So in addition to that piece not returning, there are 6 other pieces that are not returning. One was the Anthony Ewer that we might loan to the Bush House Museum. The others will be looking for new homes for. And I have photos of those pieces if you wanted to see, but I guess that was my thinking on a start for just kind of a formal approval of the pieces returning. If we want to dive more into where those have been placed, we certainly can, or we could do that next month, or however you want to proceed.
How would people like to proceed?
So I just want to clarify, we need to approve the placement of the artwork in the library at this point. Is that really what we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, the pieces, like I said, most of them have already been installed. And that's because that worked with Mr. Black's timeline, and we're trying to work with all the timelines. But it was recommended that the final placement, I think not of each individual piece, obviously, of the 30 pieces, but just recognition, formal recognition by SPAC of what pieces are returning to the library. I think it was recommended that we just get that on the books. So again, that's why I kept it to the general number of pieces, but we can certainly talk about, I do have that information and I can share exactly where different paintings have gone, so.
Well, then we need to make a motion.
If folks are ready to move forward, if you'd like more information, I understand, and I can send or share or show today.
I would be happy voting on a motion that acknowledges the pieces that are not returning and that most of the other work has been installed. Would people be comfortable with that? All right, would anyone like to make that motion?
Go for it, Spencer.
I'll motion that we approve the assigned locations of the artwork in the library and the other pieces that have been assigned elsewhere.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Well, this has been a very complicated project. I also wanted to just say that there is an opportunity to recognize volunteers by the city and for the city. And I was going to nominate the subcommittee of Eileen Cotter Howell, Paula Booth, and Rachel Bucci to be recognized. Sorry, my phone's. Anyway, I was gonna nominate them through that process and see whether they would rise to the top of getting an award. So the deadline, I think, is later this month or September.
The deadline for the volunteer recognition event is August 19th. Thank you for bringing that up, Chris. I too had thought about placing nominations. So the deadline for submittal is August 19th. The event is actually October 4th. And I've not attended one of those before, so I don't know details, but it will be within our new library. So,
Well, maybe you and I can talk about that, Heather.
great.
I know Paula and Eileen and I accepted an award for something. I don't remember what, but and then Oregon Artist Series Foundation was recognized for something at a different year. I think it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to have the arts, at least nominated in those processes.
I think Eileen and Paula deserve recognition. I mean, I contributed, but they definitely went above and beyond.
Okay, well, I can draft something. I'll draft something and circulate it.
Wonderful.
Because that deadline's coming right up.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there other business to come before us?
So again, I have a couple other comments, updates, questions, unless other folks want to, that was the last agenda item. So if other folks want to go first, if there's anything else.
Who else has something they'd like to share? Sounds like, oh, go ahead.
Y potentially has a location for a mural, and I don't know how official this ask is, but it would be it would be on the alley side in between the Y and the Statesman Journal building.
Ooh,
So it'd be a very big portion of that side. And so that's just kind of opening it up to thoughts, because they'd probably need funding of some sort, but something to keep on everyone's mind.
that would be very exciting. That would be very exciting. So I guess, is this idea coming from CB2?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe it would be good to have a meeting with Heather, and maybe me, and just talk about timeline and process, and then figure out how much money might be involved and what the needs are there. Like, in other words, let's just say, if Capital Auto wanted to step up and be a major sponsor of something like this, then maybe they would contribute X. If you have to raise the money, and look at some local grants, looking at the timelines for things like that, that's another story. It's maybe this is something that someone like Paul Gaylor would underwrite.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. But then also, importantly, looking at the city's timeline in terms of putting you're having your plan. It's got to come before SPAC. Is there a public hearing? All of that. I just can't remember what that is, but what is the projected completion timeline for the Y?
It's moved around off the top of my head. I would assume probably end of next winter, spring.
Okay.
So
yeah, just thinking about stuff like that. Mural painting typically happens, it's a seasonal thing, doesn't happen in the middle of winter. I think that could be an exciting addition for downtown.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was just stopped at the light by that Statesman building the other day, and that's a big piece of real estate.
I think it's been sold.
No way.
So I, not 100%, but kind of what I've heard is that it has been sold. So,
wow. What's a great location?
It'd be awesome in tandem with Y being finished and developing that side. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's good news. That's more good news. We've had a lot of good news this morning. All right. Heather, can you top that?
No, but on related note, I did get some other interest in the mural, just sharing with the group, and I provided the application materials too. And she knew a few of you. Let's see, let me find my note. Lori Fontaine, who's affiliated with 350 Salem. They're a climate action group that's been a part of the city's climate action plan. And she called this week, just kind of reaching out, just putting feelers out to find out what the requirements were for murals in Salem and what the process was. The group has just, I guess, apparently been throwing around the idea of needing some kind of positive visual that would kind of speak to the actions needed for climate change, rather than kind of the dreary message that we're hearing often, something positive and vibrant. So again, she was just curious about the process, and I sent her the information. We might hear more from her.
That's great. That's great. I've been seeing, I haven't shared images, but this is the season for murals to be happening because the weather's good. And there's a lot of activity around the state. I don't know if some of you might remember when Heather circulated the information from the Bloomberg Group in New York about their asphalt art street painting grants. And I've been I've seen a number of examples of some projects in New York, particularly where concrete construction barriers are being painted along with the streets that are below them. And then I was in Portland last week, and in a kind of one of those weird streets that dead ends into Burnside, there is now a food cart pod, but the street was painted, the pavement was painted, and it's kind of fun. I'll circulate an image, but it seems like, those would be projects that, would be doable in Salem if there was interest. And, again, some of these things are around public works types of things, and, there just might be an opportunity here down the road. The food cart pod thing was it was not a huge scale, very playfully painted, kind of tropical flowers and, just kind of upbeat, fun. All right. What else do we have?
Okay, just a couple other updates. I'd asked about upcoming projects that will generate percent for art funds. And what I've learned so far, we'd already mentioned, and I don't know the status of that. The reconfiguration of the Welcome Center will, I mentioned previously, generate about $5,000 for the art fund. So we know that, and I need to get an update on where that is in the process. But the other big piece is the new Public Works Operations Building, which will be constructed out at our operations yard, which, if you're not familiar, it's out off of Mission Street, off of 23rd. Kind of an interesting area up there. There's a Shell gas station back up there behind. So Hacker Architect is working on that, and I've seen some initial drawings. They're only about 30% design at this point for that building. It looks like it's going to be beautiful. I mean, the existing buildings basically are shacks for our field crews out there. And so to have this very modern, very open, bright, industrial kind of, for lack of a better term, it's kind of an industrial barn look that they're going for, with double height ceilings and kind of an entry plaza. It's going to be beautiful. So in that project itself, again, the design phase is early, but they are hoping to start breaking ground, I think, this fall, early winter.
Oh, wow.
And that particular project is expected to generate about $130,000 towards a public art piece of some kind. So that said, Aaron, not Aaron, I think Alan Dannon, and what is his name? I just blanked. The gentleman that we worked with for the police art, the Equitas, and I'm sorry, can't think of his name. We're going to have a couple guests in September to come and give us an update. Ricardo, thank you. I think it's Ricardo that will be joining us hopefully in September to give an update on that project.
Okay.
That's great. It was great to work with him.
He was awesome to work with. Yes.
Yeah.
When did you say they were breaking ground, Heather?
There's not a date yet, but they're hoping to start again late fall, early winter.
Oh, okay. And it's at Mission and 23rd?
It's actually, it will be off of 23rd Street. It's about a couple blocks, and there's kind of a new, kind of a strip mall area in there. There's new apartment complex as well that's directly across from it, which is kind of cool if we do something exterior. So it's a part of town that we don't presently have any.
Is it on the north side of Mission or the south side?
South side.
South.
Yes.
Side. Okay.
Yeah, if you're headed east.
Okay.
So if there is, there's a sign that says city shops on Mission?
Likely. Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah. It's an interesting, it's a very mixed bag of development back there.
I think I know where, is it by Popeyes?
Yeah.
Okay. I can visualize it now. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that I go to Popeyes.
I was going to say, Rachel.
I've been known to ferry certain members of my household to the drive up.
So that's coming, which is fun. And then one last update from the Human Rights Commission. I think I'd shared with Chris about a month ago now that the Human Rights Commission is looking at an idea to develop some kind of decals. They're calling them safe space decals that would be visible at businesses, organizations, public places. And they're looking for more information. We'd given them a couple of ideas on one, what that kind of effort might cost for an artist to create. So any information that SPAC could provide. And then two, how we would reach out and identify artists that are BIPOC or marginalized communities to really facilitate this effort. And I don't know, I assume that there's some organizations that maybe cater specifically to some of these other groups of artists. So looking for your feedback on that.
Do you want our feedback now or?
However, if you folks want to think about it and send some information, I can pass that along.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. That's a project that she's been, I think, talking about for a couple different months now. In addition, they've shared with me, and I would like to share it with the group if I can find it right in front of me. It's they've put together, the Human Rights Commission, as we continue to have more and more discussions about, diversity, equity, inclusion as a city. They have put together what they've called an equity lens that they've informally shared with city council and the mayor, kind of just getting all of these different groups, boards and commissions and others to kind of start thinking about in the decision-making process, how they might, include others that may not typically be included in that process. So I'd like to share that with the group, and I can send that out via email. As part of that, I just to share, they've got 13 different questions that they kind of recommend might be asked in decision-making processes, and that includes what groups might be supporting this effort, what groups might not be represented, how does this decision, policy, or initiative impact groups negatively or positively, and how does this initiative or policy empower BIPOC, LGBTQIA, and other underserved communities. I think it's really cool that they've put this together and are willing to share. So I'd like to just share that with the commission, and I'll do that after this meeting.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Back to the sticker question. When Heather reached out to me about this inquiry, I said that a couple of my neighbors teach in the art department at Chemeketa, and one of them approached the neighborhood for collage materials that she could use for her students, because the students often did not have access to a lot of art supplies. And I thought it was, and the student body at Chemeketa is very diverse. So I did suggest that, one thing that Human Rights Commission could consider would be partnering with a class at Chemeketa and doing this as a class project, and having a competition among students, but and giving them a real life design project to work on. So there are a lot of different ways that they could kind of achieve some of their own goals and have an interesting design process at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea.
I always think that giving students a real life project is fun. You never know what you're going to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What else do we need to go over before we wrap up?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll send that out to the group with her questions. And then just circling back, during our last meeting, we talked about the Native American Heritage Month. And I just wanted to let folks know, after the meeting, I shared that we were interested in learning more and had a couple different ideas. I've not heard back from Kimberly on this right after our meeting. I think she left for kind of an extended vacation. So I do expect to hear back from her again about this project, but I don't have any updates at this time.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Well, I think we're about ready to adjourn unless there is anything else we need to go over. All right. I guess we'll adjourn. It is 11:15. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you,
great
Zach.
day.
Bye. Thank
Enjoy
you.
the heat.
Yeah, stay cool.
Yeah.